Explorers, day 12 of the Route 66 trip. We're in Groom, Texas, leaving Groom, Texas, heading east on Route 66, hopefully ending up near Sayre, Oklahoma. We should easily clear the Texas border. It rained last night hard, lots of lightning, lots of thunder, but Matt has sat out underneath the cover like normal. It's all good. We just got gas, filled the tires with air, they're a little low, and now we're heading back to the main routes. Look at all the puddles. That's a lot of puddles for them. First thing we ought to be taking a look at is the Leaning Tower of Groom. So we'll take a look at that as soon as we get there. And this is what I remember about 66 in Texas. It's pretty much just empty and flat. So off we go. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, crush that like button, subscribe to the channel. There is the Leaning Tower of Groom. It actually leans like that on purpose. The guy who designed it figured out that if you kept the center of gravity over the right place, it could not fall over. And so he has the Leaning Tower of Groom right there. I am at a truck stop. No, a rest area. I'm in a rest area. And the reason I'm here is because it's the only rest area I've ever seen. It's the best rest area I've ever seen. And it has a tornado shelter. Let's go take a look. I like this sign. And we're up there right now. And that's the Texas I-40 rest area with a tornado shelter. This is one of my fears. I have no idea what to do if the tornado hits. I don't do tornadoes. Old station. Old Texaco station. Still got the pump. I'll bet that was his house. Or no, that was the garage. Built by Bradley K. Kisser in 1930. It was then in downtown Alanreed. It's got two pumps. That's cool. Alright, coming up to McClean, Texas. I've not taken some of the routes I'd planned because I've seen mud tracks from cars and trucks, and that is not something I really want to get myself into. Not today by myself. I think that's intelligent travel. old station. There's an old Texaco station. That's where we're headed, is to the Devil's Rope Museum. It's free. Museum on barbed wire. There's an old motel also, and restaurant, no longer in business. Just not enough people passing through on this. They just take the 40 and bypass all this. 66 was decommissioned in 1985. I am outside the Devil's Rope Museum. Barbed wire. Those are big balls of barbed wire. When you first enter the museum, you're greeted with some displays that don't make a lot of sense. Sad irons, which are irons you heat up on a wood stove and press clothing. Some figurines with no explanation of why you're looking at them. It's a really nice collection, but I don't know why I'm looking at it. And then a Vermishane sign series. They actually have 2 of those. But once you get into the museum proper, the Devil's Rope Museum, it's about barbed wire, the museum gets really interesting and informative. It's broken up into sections, and they talk about the whole industry of barbed wire and the purpose. Everything from the fence posts involved to the installation of the fences and the posts, the examples of mauls or the hammers that they use to drive the fence posts into the ground. They had the tools that the ranchers and the cattlemen would use to string the fences, to cut them, to maintain them. They documented the different types of posts, going from wood to steel and eventually to rock posts. Throughout the museum, they had little sculptures that were all made out of barbed wire. And they, again, did a really good job of documenting the importance of barbed wire in the West, including environmentally. Shrikes used barbed wire to impale the insects, the large grasshoppers and things they have caught to consume later. Kind of an interesting evolutionary note. They had the examples that salesmen would go to the ranchers with to demonstrate the barbed wire they were using. They had the post hole diggers that they used to dig the holes. They had blacksmith shops where they would forge the tools, fix them, and more figurines. They had displays on the different types of fences and the tools they would use to make them, from the thing on the left that spun the wires so they could put the posts between them and kind of make a picket fence. We used everything from just branches in the area to literally picket fences. They had the wire stretching tools. They had examples of what a rancher would use to go along the fence line and repair it, a small wagon pulled by mules or horses. And of course, a barbed wire museum has examples of barbed wire. Thousands of examples of barbed wire. How they splice them together, different types of barbed wire for different purposes. Different companies made different kinds of barbed wire to sell. And they had examples of almost all of them, I'm sure. I know that there are people that this is what they collect is barbed wire, and you can see there are all kinds of barbed wire to collect. Like I said, thousands of different kinds of barbed wire. They had how to splice the barbed wire together, different splices for different kinds of barbed wire, because a fence would break, cattle would break it, or people would cut them down. They also had decorative fencing for ranches and things. They had primitive early cattle guards to prevent the cattle from being on the railroad. And then, of course, barbed wire, you think of the war, and they had different types of war barbed wire. They also talked about electric fences, fences that they would electrify to keep the cattle and the livestock in. And then eventually they went into the ranching history, the history of ranching in Texas. And if you're talking about ranching history, you have to talk about the brands of the ranches. And they had, again, hundreds, if not thousands, of different kinds of brands. They had the locations of the major ranches. They had the history of the American cowboy. And I thought was a very well sequenced diagrams. Cattle from all the way from the vaqueros of Mexico to the present day. They had brand history of different ones, and each one of these is able to be read by a rancher. And then they had the implements that were used to mark the cattle, to brand the cattle. And we no longer, they do still brand cattle, but they're now about other ways of identifying cattle and their owner and specific cattle, so ranchers can keep track of who they have inoculated and have treated for certain things and who they have not. And these are all the different types of tools to mark cattle. Everything from ear marking, where they cut a notch in the ear, to branding cattle in different locations with the different brands. And they even use ear tags, so numbered ear tags, so that they can follow what they're being done. And finally, ear tattoos and some of the medical implements that they use. What I thought was cool, they also have brands of famous people. That star is the brand of the prison, Texas prison system. They had brands of President Theodore Roosevelt on his ranch, brands of Prince Wales, the Duke of Windsor, the brand of Wild Bill Cody, and President Lyndon Johnson. They also had a really good exhibit of Route 66 through the area. They had a great model of the Whiting Brothers gas station. If you want to know more, I'll put a card up here and just another link in the description. They had an old Route 66 cafe with a lot of the props and things that were actually used in a cafe. There's a old style phone. This uniform was actually worn in a cafe in Springdale, Arkansas, by an individual who donated to the museum. You can see the silverware and the flatware there, the price of food. They had more Burma shave signs, which I never get tired of those because I'm kind of creative. Really worth it. It's free, which is more than worth it, but really enjoyed the museum. A lot of history in it, the ranching, barbed wire. Really amazing place. Fun to be in. Highly recommended if you're traveling through McClean. I hope you enjoyed the video. In the comments, let me know if you've ever been to a museum in a small town, where it was and why you found it interesting. That's actually something I'd like to know. As always, be great, do good, go out and explore.